Good evening. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another Classic Comics live stream. I want to thank everyone for watching, those who are watching during the stream, and those who are also going to watch on a replay. Now, for this live stream, main thing I'm going to do is I'm going to give my review and kind of talk about Cocaine Bear, the new movie that just opened yesterday. I saw it yesterday evening. So I'll give a review, and then I'm also going to talk about the events depicted in the movie and the whole case of the cocaine bear, which is kind of a interesting story. After that, I'm going to talk a bit about Ant-Man. We'll talk about Ant-Man's drop at the box office and talk about those Aquaman test screenings, which apparently are a disaster, and things aren't looking good for Aquaman. And also Shazam's box office. That's also something that is looking pretty dire. And let's see what else we'll talk about. Okay, so Gal Gadot, I guess she's going to be in Shazam. I think apparently there's a scene with her that is leaked online, and we'll talk a little about that, and also about some of the characters that may be appearing in DC Studios projects coming up, because there's a list online that apparently has been uh, put out. Talk a bit about that. So let's start with Cocaine Bear. So I saw, and I thought it was, eh, it's okay. Overall, I thought it was a fairly mediocre film. It's one of those films that really kind of the best stuff is in the trailer. If you've seen the trailer, you've really already seen the best parts of the movie, because the most entertaining parts of the movie obviously are when the bear's going nuts and killing people. And again, that's most of it is in the trailer. So the movie was directed by Elizabeth Banks, who did that Charlie's Angels movie a while back. She does a fine job. I don't have any real glaring complaints about the direction. I did think that the editing on the film is kind of choppy. There are a couple of different parts of the film where it really feels like a scene was removed or skipped over or something, because it just seems like events change abruptly, like a character's in one spot, then later they're in another spot, and it's like, well, how did they get there? But I try to avoid getting too spoilery on it. I mean, I assume most people know the basic plot. This is based on an incident back in the 80s when there was a guy who was a part of this kind of drug ring out of Kentucky, and he threw some duffel bags full of cocaine that he was taking up from, I guess, from somewhere south of the border. And they landed in this forest, and then a bear ate them. Now, in real life, the bear died. The bear died apparently shortly after, and it was already dead when it was first found. So all the stuff of it killing people is completely fictionalized. They basically just took this incident and kind of spun this story out of it. But that's the basic plot. Now they add in some subplots. There's a single mother, of course, uh, with a child who is in the park while the bear's loose, and she's trying to find her kid and save her kid from the bear. And then there's a couple of guys connected to the drug ring who come to the park looking for the drugs, and they're sort of stumbling around in there as well. And there's a cop who's investigating the drug ring. He shows up, and then there are some punks basically who kind of loiter in the park and like try to rob people, and they get mixed up in it as well. So, it's the movie. It's leans a bit into what we would call wokeness a little bit. It's not in your face, and it's not kind of beating you over the head with it, but it is there. Mainly in noting that there really is no white male in this movie who isn't basically just a wimp or a jerk. In fact, they're all criminals, really, except for there's a little boy. Oh, and there's a white man who's like some kind of tree hugging sort of wildlife guy, but he gets killed very quickly. Now, I'm trying to think of how to talk about this without giving it away. So there's plenty of gore. The bear is completely CGI, it looks like. I think there may have been a couple of scenes where the bear is kind of lying still, which I think maybe was like some kind of a prop, a physical prop. But when the bear is up and moving around, it's all clearly CGI. Most of the gore is CGI too, which I generally find, kind of unconvincing. And they're definitely of course, it's a dark comedy, and there are definitely parts of the movie, which again, if you've seen the trailer, you've probably seen most of it, where the bear is doing some pretty crazy things. Like, there's one part where the bear shoots up a tree, like, impossibly fast, or, the bear chases down an ambulance and, like, does this ridiculous leap into the ambulance. Again, it's all amusing and fun, uh, but again, if you've seen the trailer, you've already seen it. So I thought that back when the trailer dropped, I thought that, or I became curious, so I tried to look up some information about the story on YouTube. And I found a video. It was, what's the channel? Today I Found Out, I think is the name of the channel. And they do a lot of these sort of channels where they try to tell these historic stories. And usually they're in the business of kind of debunking or trying to give the real facts and not just like whatever the popular lore is. And I watched this video they had about what happened to the bear after this whole incident. Because in real life, again, the bear did find these drugs and ingested a lot of it, but then apparently died shortly thereafter and never killed anybody. It was already dead when it was found. And according to the video I watched, so after the autopsy was done on the bear, and finding all the cocaine in it, supposedly the coroner gave the bear's corpse to a taxidermist who was a friend. And the friend subsequently, skinned the bear and stuffed it and then sold it to one of the state parks, like to the Georgia State Park Commission or something like that. And it was put on display in a visitor center and it stayed there for a while. Now, at some point, there was a forest fire in this park. And since the fire was getting near the visitor center and it was in danger of burning the visitor center down, the visitor center was evacuated and everything was taken out of it, including the bear. Everything then went into storage, and then subsequently after that, the bear was stolen from storage. And at some point after that, it wound up in a pawn shop, in a pawn shop where it was purchased by Waylon Jennings, the country singer Waylon Jennings, who then subsequently gave it as a gift to some guy he knew in Vegas, some rich guy he knew as a gift. And then it went on display in this guy's mansion for a while, but then a couple of years later, he died. And then subsequently, his stuff was put on sale at auction. And then at the auction, this Chinese man bought the bear for like a couple of $100. Now, I was never clear on if this was supposed to be like a guy from China who then took the bear back to his home in China, or if it was just like a Chinese American living, I don't know, like in San Francisco or something. I don't know. But he bought this bear and took it back and to his home. But surprise, surprise, his wife didn't like the bear and so insisted that he get rid of it. So he wound up putting it on display in this Chinese like herbal shop or traditional medicine shop that he ran. And it stayed there for a few years. Then he died. And now at some point after this, there was this organization called I think it was called Georgia for Georgians or something like that. It was some group that was supposedly interested in Georgia heritage and history or whatever. And they apparently felt that this bear was an important part of Georgia history. So they tracked the bear down and eventually found it with this widow and wanted to buy the bear. And she basically was like, yeah, take it. If you'll pay for the ship it, you can have it because I don't want the thing. And they took it and they put it on display in this like museum, quote unquote museum that they set up. And again, this channel today, I found out they usually seem to be pretty good at facts and stuff like that. But earlier today, while I was kind of brushing up on the story, I came across an article that actually shows that what they said in that video is all a hoax. None of that happened. So let me bring that article up here. This is in Variety. Let me see. Bring this. Okay. So what happened to the real cocaine bear? Get out of the way. Move. Okay, so this weekend, Universal premieres what may be the most ridiculous movie of the year, Cocaine Bear, a violent horror comedy inspired by a bizarre real life event. In 1985, a Georgia black bear died after ingesting at least 3 or 4 grams of cocaine that had been shipped from a plane by a smuggler who may have been high on cocaine himself. Yeah, I'm thinking it's pretty much a guarantee, but whatever. But Hollywood is not the first party to spin fantasy fiction from the bear's tragic fate. In 2015, Kentucky locals Whit Heiler and Griffin Van Meter installed a taxidermy bear into their, oh, I'm sorry, it's Kentucky for Kentucky, not Georgia for Georgia, into their Kentucky for Kentucky fun mall because the guy that died, the guy that had dropped the drugs down into the park in the first place and whose death kind of set this whole thing off, he was from Kentucky. And I'll get into that a little later too. So installed a taxidermy bear into their Kentucky for Kentucky fun mall, a quirky brick and mortar tourist shop, claiming that it was in fact the real cocaine bear. We here at the Kentucky Fun Mall obtained the actual cocaine bear taxidermy and have put it on display for everyone to enjoy. The Kentucky Fun Mall advertises on its website, which touts various styles of cocaine bear t shirts, sweatshirts, tank tops, snow globes, listed as blow globes, hats, socks, beer koozies, soap stickers, patches, Valentine's Day cards, and postcards. Nothing says I'm having a nose full of fun in Kentucky like a cocaine bear postcard, advertises the site. Before we searched for Cocaine Bear's stuffed remains, he was a forgotten footnote in the story of the Bluegrass Conspiracy, wrote Kentucky for Kentucky in a statement to Variety time to the release of Cocaine Bear. And the Bluegrass Conspiracy was this drug ring that was responsible for the drug shipments. In 2015, we tracked down the long lost taxidermy bear and brought him to the Kentucky for Kentucky Provenance. Visited by and bringing joy to thousands of people every month, Cocaine Bear is not just a roadside attraction and soon to be biopic anti hero. He's also a city mascot, a heartwarming community builder, and a warning to all the dangers of drug abuse. We targeted his name and likeness as part of our guardianship, popularizing him as a character. You can visit Cocaine Bear free of charge during opening hours. We hope that you do. So this story does not align with what actually happened to the Cocaine Bear, according to Fran Wiley and Gary Garner, two retired Georgia Bureau of Investigation agents with direct knowledge of the actual 1985 case. Our bear was a female, says Wiley, who was the assistant agent in charge of GBI's Drug Enforcement Office and tasked with the case. Additionally, our bear did not have many claws because we took some of the claws to get the bear's DNA so we could determine the age of the bear. Perhaps most saliently, our bear could not have been taxidermied, she explains. Our bear had been on the ground for about 3 months when we found it, so it was badly decomposed. In fact, the people at the crime lab were so mad that we brought this bear in because it stunk up the whole lab. They would have incinerated this after they did all their testing. They would not have kept this thing. In an interview with the Wall Street Journal, Van Meter confirmed that Kentucky for Kentucky's cocaine bear claim is a tall tale. So they admitted it. They admitted they made the whole thing up. Oh, hey, J Man. I want to see Cocaine Bear, but I'll wait till streaming. Maybe even get the Blu-ray. Looks hilarious. Yeah, I mean, it's got a few laughs in it, but again, most of the laughs are in the trailer. You know, It's a decent enough movie, I guess. On a scale of 1 to 5, I'd give it like a 2, maybe 2.5 at the most. It's a decent way to kill a couple hours, but it's nothing to get excited about, in my opinion. So, but anyway, yeah, so this guy Van Meter admits they made up the whole story about how they got this stuffed bear. He told the outlet that the bear was actually inherited from a friend's parents who were looking to unload their basement taxidermy. With the help of a creative friend in advertising, Van Meter said they spun a fictional backstory about how they came to own the bear, involving at least one pop culture figure with a well documented history with the drug. Oh, I guess that would be Waylon Jennings. And anyway, then on their website, they relate this whole story, which again they had now admit is made up. So, after the Georgia Bureau of Investigation's medical examiner had performed a necroscopy, he contacted a friend who did taxidermy. He had the bear's body stuffed and gave it to the Chattahoochee River National Recreation Area, where the cocaine bear taxidermy stood in the visitors center in the early 1990s. Sometime in the early 90s, the park and its facilities were evacuated ahead of an approaching wildfire. The employees took the artifacts with them and put them in temporary storage in a nearby town. Of course, they went missing. The cocaine bear surfaced next in appropriately enough, Las Vegas. Country star Waylon Jennings had found it, bought it, and gifted it to his friend Ron Thompson as an inside joke. When Thompson died in 2009, his estate went to auction and the bear was sold. When we got wind of this, we contacted Nellis Auction House on the off chance we'd be able to figure something out. And we did. We found out who and where the bear had been sold to. We contacted him. Sadly, he had passed away, but we were able to speak to his wife, who told us we were free to take Cocaine Bear off our hands for the low, low price of $0 plus shipping. So, naturally, when Vanity Fair contacted the Chattahoochee River National Recreation Area, park rangers were unable to confirm any part of the story on the Kentucky for Kentucky website. Adam Barnes, the manager for Jennings' son, Shooter, Waylon Jennings' son is named Shooter, really? Okay. Who works closely with Jennings' estate, disputed it. Quote, Waylon Jennings never owned a taxidermy bear, unquote. When asked for evidence of the bear's authenticity, a resident for the Nellis auction house told VF that, quote, it does not have any authenticator on site, nor does our product go through an authentication process unless stated otherwise. Most product is sold as is and at the discretion of the bidder. Maybe customers in the market for cocaine bear merch won't care whether the taxidermy bear in Kentucky for Kentucky store is fake. But other parties like NBC station WAVE3 News have felt the need to point out that the tourist shop story is more fish than bear. This past December, Wave spoke to the medical examiner who worked on the actual bear. We had bones and a little bit of hide, unquote, the examiner told Wave, revealing it was impossible to have preserved the actual animal killed by cocaine. Quote, we only had parts of the bear, unquote. Part of the reason why Wiley, the retired Georgia Bureau of Investigation agent, agreed to speak to VF was to point out that the cocaine bear being advertised as real is actually a fake. They call it Pablo Escobar, she scoffs, pointing out that some people will likely believe the story's fictional lore and pay for merchandise. After all, sites like CNN, CBS, The Washington Post, Yahoo, and the New York Times have even reiterated Kentucky for Kentucky's claims. Wiley isn't such a fan of the Cocaine Bear movie either. Quote, I know this is supposed to be a horror comedy movie, but the only thing it's going to do is make money for Hollywood, she continues. And lots of people are going to watch it, and lots of people are going to go to the store and buy a t shirt or a mug. And that's just the way the world is, but that's not the truth of it. So I'm telling you the truth. Yeah. So, yeah, that whole story is made up. Now, they do have an article here in Variety that sort of tells the true story. And I thought I'd go over that right quick. Let me bring that up. Okay, so the true story behind Cocaine Bear, a 175-pound beast, a dead drug smuggler in Gucci loafers, and more. Isaac Sharf. Wow, what a name. So Elizabeth Banks's Cocaine Bear is now playing in theaters, bringing with it an onslaught of detached limbs, blood-soaked bodies, and gory mayhem. But that's not exactly how one would describe the real story of the Cocaine Bear, also known as Pablo Escobar. Banks's film, scripted by Jimmy Warden, is inspired by the 1985 discovery of a dead bear in Georgia's Chattahoochee National Forest. The true story behind Cocaine Bear started in September 1985 when convicted drug smuggler Andrew Thornton died after a parachuting accident. The working theory is that Thornton was traveling in a plane with 880 pounds of cocaine and thought the feds were trailing him, so he decided to throw some of the stash out of the plane and take some more with him when he parachuted out. His plan went awry. That's putting it mildly. Thornton was reported dead on September 11th, 1985. He was found in a driveway in Knoxville, Tennessee, wearing Gucci loafers and with roughly 15 million worth of cocaine strapped to his body. A bear did not enter the picture until 4 months later. The New York Times reported in December 1985 that a 175-pound black bear died of an overdose of cocaine after discovering a batch of the drug. The bear was found dead in Chattahoochee National Forest. So a 175-pound bear, I mean, that's not very big. I mean, I weigh more than that, and I'm not a big guy. So this must have been an immature bear, I'm thinking. And definitely the bear in the movie is bigger than that. I mean, the bear in the movie is definitely on the big end for a black bear. The cocaine was apparently dropped from a plane piloted by Andrew Thornton, a convicted drug smuggler who died on September 11th in Knoxville, Tennessee, because he was carrying too heavy a load while parachuting. Read the UPI report in the Times. The Bureau said the bear was found Friday in northern Georgia among 40 opened plastic containers with traces of cocaine. The Associated Press later reported findings from Dr. Kenneth Alonso, Georgia's chief medical examiner at the time. The doctor performed an autopsy on the bear and found that it had 3 or 4 grams of cocaine in its bloodstream, although the bear could have consumed even more. Rumors have long circulated that the bear ate all 40 containers worth of cocaine, which would be about 35 pounds. That's about as far as the story of the cocaine bear goes in real life. Unlike the new Universal Pictures horror-back comedy, there were no other casualties or severed limbs found in the forest that linked back to the bear. A screenwriter, Jimmy Warden, told Variety, "The film is not historical fiction, but my twisted fantasy of what I wish actually happened after the bear did all that cocaine." Banks told Variety she signed on to direct Cocaine Bear because she saw it as an opportunity to give the bear his own point of view. Whoa, his own point of view. So they misgendered the bear. That's not good. She had said she had a deep sympathy for the bear after reading the original reports from 1985. "I really feel like this is so effed up that this bear got dragged into this drug run gone bad and ends up dead," Banks said. "I felt like this movie could be the bear's revenge story." Well, yeah, I guess, but I mean, most of the people that the bear kills have nothing to do with the drug deal. So it's kind of messed up. And as I say, I mean, the movie overall is all right. It's an enjoyable enough. I would say if you're going to see it, go see it at maybe a matinee. Don't pay full price for it. Um, there were some things like one thing that kind of bugged me about it is, of course, it's set in the 80s because this originally took place in 85, and that's fine. And for the most part, I think they do fine with sort of setting it there. Uh, there's plenty of 80s tunes on the soundtrack and all that. But there were some things in it I found a bit anachronistic, particular people saying things that I really don't think they would have said in the 80s. Like the most obvious one was there's a couple of kids in the movie. There's a girl who's I'm guessing around 10 or 11, and then there's a little boy who's like a year or two younger, like maybe 8 or 9. And at the end of the movie, there's some police arriving, and the little boy says, "Oh, here comes the popo." as if any white kid in the '80s was gonna be saying that. No, that no white kid in the '80s would have said that. I don't know if any kid would have. But, there were a few other things, but they're minor. There is, one of the drug dealer characters. So in the movie, the main drug dealer, the guy who is kinda running this bluegrass conspiracy. Oh, hey, Adega. How you doing, man? Thanks for stopping by. So the main drug dealer in the movie is played by Ray Liotta, which, I don't know, I think maybe this was his final film, I'm not sure. Um, which I guess is appropriate because I think that Ray Liotta probably had more than a passing familiarity with cocaine, I'm guessing. But he plays like the guy running the bluegrass conspiracy, this sort of Kentucky-based drug ring. And he sends a couple of guys to try and collect the drugs in the forest because apparently they had a designated spot where they were supposed to drop this stuff in the forest. And the two guys they send, there's a black guy, and I forget his name. And then there's another guy, and the other guy is supposed to be Ray Liotta's son. And the son is played by what's his name? Um, Alden Ehrenreich. Is it the guy that played Han Solo a few years back? Not Han Solo. We'll just call him not Han Solo. And the black guy, he didn't seem like a guy from the '80s. He seemed more like a guy from, say, maybe the late '90s or more recent. He didn't really seem to fit into the '80s milieu to me. The way he dressed and the way he behaved, it didn't really seem appropriate. But it's not a big deal, I guess. Um, as far as the acting in the film, I mean, most of the performances are fine. Like I say again, there's a couple who seem like they don't really fit into the '80s quite. They seem like they're too contemporary, but it doesn't ruin the movie. I did think that the kids. So another thing about it was the kids. So the kids, they swear a lot, and particularly they swear a lot in front of adults. And back then, I don't think kids would be doing that. I'm pretty sure because I mean I was a kid in the '80s, so I think I would know. And particularly, again, this is set in Georgia and kind of in a rural area, kind of out in the country. So, maybe in a big city, maybe urban area, maybe something you would have kids doing that. But again, I lived in that kind of environment and grew up in the '80s, and kids weren't going to swear like that in front of adults, particularly in front of their parents like that. So that was another thing. Let's see. Now, as I said, there is a little bit of wokeness that creeps into it, mainly just because they're the male characters are pretty much, there are no positive male characters really. They're pretty much all either criminals or they're kind of like mopey sort of wimps. And of course, even the of course, even the cocaine bear itself is a strong, independent single mother who's got two cubs. And another thing that kind of bugged me was that the movie ends with the bear alive. I mean, again, in real life, the bear just took it looks like a few grams of cocaine and died, whereas in this movie, the bear consumes several bricks of cocaine and just keeps going. At the end of the movie, well, I guess I shouldn't have said that. I don't. Okay, I won't give away what happened at the end, but let me move on to something else. Let's see what else about it. Um, okay, I guess that'll go ahead and wrap up on Cocaine Bear. Um, so let's talk about Ant-Man for a minute. So Ant-Man is had a big drop at the box office. Yeah, I had an oopsie. Yeah, I had an oopsie, Adega. Sorry about that because I didn't mean to give any of that away. I won't talk any more about it. So Ant-Man is going to be, or rather already has, it looks like if projections are right, it's having a big drop At the box office, apparently they're looking at well, I'll just read the headline. So, if early weekend projections hold, Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania is in danger of suffering the worst second weekend decline ever for a Hollywood superhero pick opening to 100 million or more. So, Marvel Studios' Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania is facing stormy times at the weekend box office, where it could tumble 71.6% to 30 million plus in its sophomore outing. So yeah, so a nearly 72% drop in its second weekend. That's a lot because I think generally it's like I think it's what is it like 52%, I think is kind of like the standard thing that you expect, about a 52% drop. If these projections are right, the pick is in danger of suffering the worst. Hello, Dale C. Hello, thank you for stopping by. So I already finished talking about Cocaine Bear, if that's why you're here. I just finished that, talking about that, and doing my review a minute ago. Currently, I'm talking about Ant-Man and the Wasp and the box office this weekend. So if these projections are right, the pick is in danger. Okay, I already read that. So no superhero films that are members of this club have fallen 70% or more. DC's Batman and Superman, Batman versus Superman Dawn of Justice comes the closest at 69.1%. Among Marvel's Cinematic Universe titles, last year's Thor Love and Thunder saw Marvel's biggest decline, or 67.7%. And among any film starting off with 100 million or more, the final Harry Potter pick, released in 2011, tops the list of second biggest weekend drops with a decline of 72%, according to ComScore. Ant-Man opened to 120 million over the 4-day President's Day weekend, including a franchise best 105.5 million for the 3 days. But poor word of mouth is clearly hurting the movie, along with competition from new offering Cocaine Bear, which is stealing away younger adults and especially males. A historic storm on the West Coast also isn't helping matters. Universal's Cocaine Bear, which even beat Ant-Man 3 on Friday with 8.7 million versus 8.3 million. All right, pardon me for just a moment here. I'm going to mute for just a second. Okay. Okay, so which beat even beat Ant-Man 3 on Friday with 8.7 million versus 8.3 million, is on course to open to an estimated 21.21 million ahead of expectations. Masters Maniac Mexico, hello again. Thank you for stopping by. Well, no one cares anymore. They destroyed it all, and to regain my type of trust to Marvel, it would take them at least a decade. Hail to you, sir. Yeah, I mean, I think that's really what it kind of boils down to. I think people are just getting tired of that Marvel formula because it's just kind of the same thing over and over again. It's not even so much that the Marvel movies are bad; it's just that they're flawed movies, and taking each movie independently, it's like that's okay, it's forgivable, but these movies are all bad. They're all flawed in exactly the same ways. They all make do the same things. They all make the same missteps and all have the same flaws. And after a while, you just, you get tired of it. And I think superhero fatigue is really just starting to settle in. All right. So, directed by Elizabeth Banks, Cocaine Bear is a dark comedy about a drug smuggling operation that goes awry when a 500-pound bear ingests a duffel bag of cocaine and goes on a killing rampage in a small Georgia town. Banks also produced the high profile genre pick alongside Phil Lord, Christopher Miller, Max Handelman, Brian Duffield, and Aditya Sood. The feature earned a B cinema score, which, while low, generally is not a problem for horror-centric films. In addition to Cocaine Bear, Lionsgate and Kingdom Story Company's Jesus Revolution is opening ahead of expectation. Yeah, apparently that one's doing better than folks thought as well. The The faith-based feature boasts a glowing A+ cinema score and earned 6.95 million Friday, which includes an estimated 3.3 million from early screenings. Wednesday and Thursday, Jesus Revolution is expected to come in at a strong number 3 with as much as 14 million, 15 million. The 1970s set features inspired by true events centering on a revivalist Christian movement that swept America. Hmm, okay. So yeah, it's pretty evident. I mean, when you look at the recent films from Marvel, there's uh, uh they're not having the same success they had because well, if you go back to No Way Home, that was huge and that did massive. And then what Doctor Strange came out, I think, in April of last year, and that was huge too. It didn't break a billion, but it got close. It made like 900 million something. But I think it was kind of riding on the coattails of Spider-Man, and also because Doctor Strange was in that Spider-Man movie too. But then Thor came out, and that really disappointed, and rightfully so, because that movie is not very good. And then Wakanda came out, and that I wouldn't say it flopped or anything, but that also I think was kind of disappointing when you consider the first one made over a billion. That one, what did Wakanda Forever make? I think it made like 600 million domestically or something like that. I'm not going to look it up. And then now you have Ant-Man, and obviously it's early still, but I think this thing is not going to do so great, especially when apparently it's not doing too well over in China. I think that's a big problem for them is China's not coming through for them. Okay. And I did do a live stream a while back about superhero fatigue. If you want to check that out on my channel. Now, what are we talking? Okay, let's talk about Aquaman. So, there's also news that's been going around about these Aquaman test screenings. Apparently, they have not gone well. So, let's just talk about that. Okay. So, Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom test screening very poorly. So, principal photography on Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom began in London on June 28th of 2021. So, over a year and a half ago. There's been a lot of behind the scenes drama with this one. After multiple release date changes, which included December 16, 2022 and March 17, 2023, Warner Brothers finally settled on a December 25th, 2023 launch for this latest DCEU installment, and possibly the final DCEU installment. Last year I had wait, no, okay, so last year I had been told that Zaslav wasn't happy with what he'd seen of Aquaman 2, which is actually still in post-production, but not to the point of shelving it like he did with Batgirl. The fact that James Gunn has been praising The Flash publicly, but hasn't said a peep about the Aquaman sequel speaks volumes about where we're at when it comes to this movie. Yeah, that does kind of say a lot. For many months now, I've been hearing about the terrible scores it's been getting at test screenings, and Big Screen Leaks seems to have heard the same whispers. And then they have a quote here. There's a reason I've been avoiding any questions about Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, but since at Viewer Anon put it out there, it brings me no joy to back him up and tell you that test screenings for this film have not been good. Hopefully, one can fix this before December. According to Viewer Anon, even after 6 test screenings, Aquaman 2 results are not looking great. I've consistently heard over the last half year or so that it's boring, not as good as the first, and potentially one of the worst DCEU movies. This is one of the bad things about being a scooper. I don't want to crap on movies, but at a certain point when people know there have been a lot of test screenings where our silence becomes pretty telling. I like Juan. I know he's had a rough time on this one. I hope it works out. Given the okay, it says troublesome stare. I'm pretty sure it says they mean troublesome state. Proofreading, folks, editing, it's a thing. Given the troublesome state of Aquaman 2, there were obviously at some point Some reshoots called by director James Wan. We're not entirely sure what they included, but they seem to have happened to insert Michael Keaton and Ben Affleck's Batmans, although I'm hearing Keaton's cameo has been cut. And that doesn't include supposedly didn't Cavill do a cameo and that got cut out too? Oh, and then there's Amber Heard. Yeah, the turd in the punch bowl, so to speak, or in the bed, who also stars in this one. She did debunk rumors in November that she would not be reprising a role as Mira, but not without a petition circulating online to have Heard fired from the franchise, receiving more than 4 million signatures. In December, The Hollywood Reporter reported that Warner Brothers was considering ending the Aquaman series and recasting Jason Momoa in another DCEU role. Regardless, if this film fails, the chances of seeing a full reboot in the DCEU increases considerably. The only actor that'll be left in the original films would be Ezra Miller's Flash. Jesus. I mean, that says so much right there. It's just in so many ways. Then they have some quotes from Twitter here. This person, Casey Walsh, posted every test screening has had mostly unfinished VFX and no one walked out. The main issue was they completely changed the plot and villains of the film. It's not even the same movie that tested 4 times prior. Twitter account Superman on Film posted, for what it's worth, I heard the version of Aquaman 2 that's being tested is far from complete with lots of unfinished effects, which render lots of scenes very confusing. The film isn't anywhere near locked yet, and it comes out in 10 months, lots of time left. So folks maybe need to relax. Jeff Snyder posted, I hear it's terrible, and that's why Momoa is going to be Lobo going forward. But they can't say that yet because then it would be a lame duck, and DC is hoping to wring another billion out of the box office. First one was awful too, so not a huge surprise. I mean, I disagree that the first one was awful. I'm not saying it was, you know, a great movie, but I thought it was kind of a fun enough popcorn film. Okay, let me go ahead and move away from that. So what else have I got here? Okay. Oh yeah. So DC Studios has made some announcement about characters that may be appearing in upcoming projects. So let me bring that up, and I'll talk about that next. Okay. So this is on the direct.com. DC Studios just teased its rebooted hero and villain lineup. One of DC Studios' new executives has teased which DC Comics heroes and villains may appear in Chapter 1 Gods and Monsters. DC Studio heads James Gunn and Peter Safran recently revealed their plans for the new DCU, which will act as a reset of the existing cinematic slate. Included in the lineup of projects are new stories featuring familiar DC heroes like Superman and Batman, as well as DC Comics characters who haven't been given the live action treatment, like the Authority and Booster Gold. While the DCU entering, or with the DCU entering a new era, it opens the door for a lot of popular comic book heroes and villains to appear, many of whom fans have been dying to see. A poll conducted by EGN has revealed which heroes and villains fans most want to see in the upcoming DCU slate. DCU or DC Studios co CEO James Gunn then reposted the results of the poll on his Instagram story. Gunn highlighted the top 10 characters who received the most votes and commented, will 5 of 10 do? Indicating that at least half of these characters listed below will be included in the new DCU. Dega says, Lanterns better be good. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I have mixed feelings about that one, Adega, because it doesn't. I mean, the Green Lantern franchise has been a fairly cosmic kind of set franchise, out in space. And they're talking about it being this kind of Earth based or Earthbound detective story with John Stewart and Hal Jordan, yeah, and they compared it to True Detective, and that's all well and good, but I think with Green Lantern, you'd be better off going with more like, say, Lethal Weapon in space or something like that. And so I don't know. It sounds to me like a cost-cutting thing. I think they're doing this maybe to try and make it cheap so it doesn't cost a lot. Okay, so the first character on our list here is Nightwing. Nightwing, aka Dick Grayson, is one of the most popular Batman sidekicks. He began as an iteration of Robin before an iteration of Robin. He was Robin. He's the original Robin. Uh, yeah, and he was Robin for like 40 years, like an iteration. Give me a break. Before retiring from that persona and becoming the hero known as Nightwing. Martian Manhunter, or John Jones, is a telepath and shapeshifter from the planet Mars who disguises himself as a police officer after he is marooned on Earth. Martian Manhunter was most recently teased in live action in Zack Snyder's Justice League. Now, actually, taking John Jones and doing a kind of true detective type story with him could actually work. Because again, in his alter ego, he actually is like a police detective. So that would kind of actually make sense. Lobo, the interstellar mercenary and bounty hunter named Lobo, has received a lot of attention lately after Aquaman star Jason Momoa showed interest in the role. Lobo is an alien from Zarnia and was introduced in the DC comic The Omega Men. So yeah, I mean, I think everybody agrees that Momoa was really better suited to playing Lobo than playing Aquaman, and that's what he should have been playing all along. And if they do cast him in that way, I think that would be a good way to go. Brainiac. Brainiac is a famous DC villain with a 12th level intellect who is most commonly pitted against Superman. He'll be seen in the upcoming video game Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League. So, I mean, I'd be glad to see Brainiac, but there have been so many different versions of this character. It's a kind of a question of which Brainiac are we going to get? And they really have had difficulty settling on what Brainiac is ever since Crisis on Infinite Earths. There have been so many versions, so many iterations, and none of them seem to have lasted more than maybe a decade or so. And when you're talking about we're getting close to 40 years since Crisis, I mean I don't think that's good. I just hope they do a good version. Deathstroke. So the infamous Batman villain and mercenary Slade Wilson, aka Deathstroke, was portrayed in the old DCU by Joe Manganiello. Hope I'm saying that right, but it's possible the character will have a new future in Chapter 1 Gods and Monsters. Jason Todd. Jason Todd has held a few different personas throughout his DC history. He was another popular iteration of Batman's sidekick Robin before he was killed by the Joker and then resurrected as Red Hood. Actually, he was not a popular iteration of Robin. That's why he was killed off. The readers literally voted to kill him off because he wasn't popular. Zatanna has long been rumored to be entering the DCU. The character is a notable member of the Justice League and performs as a stage magician who possesses actual magic powers. The Court of Owls, the mysterious shadowy group known as the Court of Owls, recently appeared in DC's Gotham Knights video game. The criminal group have become major antagonists for Batman over the years in DC Comics, but haven't been included in live action yet. Mr. Freeze, another famous DC villain from Batman's Rogues Gallery. Victor Freeze, aka Mr. Freeze, was involved in a fatal accident that turned him cold blooded. The character was last portrayed in a movie by Arnold Schwarzenegger in Batman and Robin in 1997, so he's well overdue for a comeback. John Constantine. The occult investigator John Constantine has seen a few different iterations over the years in both the Arrowverse and a movie with Keanu Reeves, which was recently confirmed to be getting a sequel. But didn't they? No, but more recently, haven't they said that that movie's not happening or maybe not happening? I don't know. It seems like I heard something about that. Okay, so Gunn is implying that about five of these characters are going to be in the new DCU. and in this gods and monsters phase or whatever you call it. So I think it's a pretty safe bet that any character who is Batman related is going to be given a big screen treatment. So that would include Nightwing, Jason Todd, the Court of Owls, Mr. Freeze. So that's pretty much it right there. Because that's four. So then there's maybe one other from this list that's going to be coming in the gods and monsters. Because I think it's just they're just talking about this gods and monsters initial phase. Like others may come later. Um, I don't think they do Martian Manhunter if they're not doing Justice League, and they're not doing Justice League yet. So I'm going to say no on him. Lobo, I mean, he's a possibility. Brainiac again, a Superman foe, maybe a possibility. He could be the bad guy in that Superman. That's I forget the name of it. That Superman movie that Gunn is doing that he's writing. Deathstroke, maybe Zatanna. Okay, so assuming it's not Constantine, then I'm thinking it's probably going to be either Deathstroke or Brainiac would be my guess. I don't know. I haven't heard anything about the plot to that Superman film aside from that it's kind of starting him off. And that would kind of work maybe because again, I mean Brainiac really hasn't been done on screen. Although they sort of did him in Superman 3. I think in the early drafts of Superman 3, Brainiac was supposed to be part of the story. Because late in the film, of course, the Richard Pryor character builds that supercomputer and then it possesses that woman, and sort of she becomes like this sort of cybernetic creature that was originally supposed to be Brainiac. But I think that I don't know why they didn't do it. My guess is the studio just didn't want to pay the license to use the character and they figured, we don't need it. So they just did it without calling the character Brainiac. But yeah, so that's gonna be my guess. What, Nightwing, Brainiac, or maybe Deathstroke. Jason Todd, Court of Owls, Mr. Freeze. Yeah, I think that's probably what it's going to be. All right, what else have I got here? Okay, so Gal Gadot. So let's talk about that for a minute. So Gal Gadot apparently has teased that she may be coming back as Wonder Woman. Where is that? Okay, so this is also from the direct. Gal Gadot teases DC return hopes after cancellation of Wonder Woman 3. So DC star Gal Gadot offered her first public comments teasing her superpowered return after the cancellation of Wonder Woman 3. While the Wonder Woman threequel is not moving forward and is considered dead in its current incarnation, there are still hopes that Gadot's DC tenure may not be over. This comes after Wonder Woman director Patty Jenkins reportedly fought with Warner Brothers over the direction of the film. One source told The Wrap that Jenkins thought WB didn't understand the character, didn't understand character arcs. Despite this and a Wonder Woman prequel moving forward without Gadot, that would be that Paradise Lost thing. New DC studio CEOs James Gunn and Peter Safran have seemingly left the door open for the actress to come back. On her personal Twitter account, Wonder Woman actress Gal Gadot, or Gal Gadot, I think it's Gadot. I keep calling her Gadot. Gal Gadot teased her potential DC comeback, replying to a comment from Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania star Evangeline Lilly, saying the MCU actress would like to team up with Gadot on screen in a comic book movie. Gadot tweeted, "Let's do it." That's not that's not the story, is it? Surely that would be more than that. These are the first public comments from the DC actress about the world of superhero movies since the cancellation of Wonder Woman 3 last fall. Shortly after the news of the threequel being scrapped broke, Dot posted some brief comments online, noting that, quote, she has been so grateful for the opportunity to play such an incredible, iconic character, unquote, but did not mention anything of a potential return. A few years ago, it was announced that I was going to play Wonder Woman. I've been so grateful for the opportunity to play such an incredible, iconic character. And the more than anything, I'm grateful to you, the fans. Can't wait to share her next chapter with you. As for crossing over with Lily, it may not have to be on DC's turf. Dot has previously been teased as being open to a Marvel role if something were to come up. Maybe we could do something like, Wonder Woman appears in the Avengers and the Avengers appear in Wonder Woman. We'll see. I mean, I'm open. I'm all about love and I like my friends both in DC and Marvel, so we'll see. I mean, yeah, I'm not holding my breath on that. Will Gal Gadot be back as Wonder Woman? Right now, it remains unclear if Gadot is officially done as DC's iconic Amazonian. While on one hand, Wonder Woman films are being canceled and the franchise goes in a different direction, DC Studios co-CEO James Gunn remains cagey when the idea of Gadot being fired comes up. Recently, Gunn responded to fans online who assumed Gadot had been booted by them, telling them, quote, I'm not sure where you're getting that we booted Gal, unquote. This also comes as a cameo of Gadot's DC superhero was cut from the upcoming Flash film. While the actress is expected to appear in Shazam Fear of the Gods, DC Studios looks as though it is actively moving away from the actress despite what Gunn may say in Instagram comments. Plus, add in the fact that a Wonder Woman related project is on the way from the comic book giant without Gadot on board, and it paints a bleak case for the DC actress's future. Gadot will supposedly make her next DC appearances in Shazam Fury of the Gods, May 17th. Yeah, I haven't seen that yet, but I've heard there's a scene, I guess, that leaked online of her in that movie. Okay, so I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think they're done with her. They're just not. It's kind of like with Aquaman, and the Shazam movie. They're going to move on from these people. They're just not saying so because they know it'll hurt the box office of these films if they admit that these are lame duck projects that don't have a future. Okay. All right. So I'm coming up on an hour. Um, Actually, let's look at Shazam right quick. So speaking of Shazam, so the box office predictions for Shazam ain't looking too good. Let's look at that right quick. And this is from Screen Rant. What Shazam 2's poor box office projection means for his DC future. Shazam Fury of the Gods is currently tracking for a poor opening weekend at the box office, which raises doubts for the DC hero's future. Shazam Fury of the Gods is looking at a poor box office projection that might well spell doom for those who hoped Zachary Levi's hero would be sticking around in the new DC universe. Following DC's rebranding from the old DC EU to the new DCU, try saying that 5 times fast. Under co-CEOs James Gunn and Peter Safran, in, uncertainty has been instated where the future of actors such as Levi is concerned. Masters Maniac Mexico says, I'm literally afraid to look at Shazam. Really? Okay. Henry Cavill's exit from the role of Superman was the first major change DC announced in its casting department after the new management started, and that move proved that no actor was guaranteed to have a role in the DC universe. While Shazam Fear of the Gods was explained to be easy to connect well with the DC universe, thanks to Shazam being in his own corner of the DC, by Gunn during the recent DCU Chapter 1 slate announcement, the movie's poor box office projection might kill this version of the hero's chances of continuing at DC. The domestic weekend for 2019 Shazam saw the original film rake in 53.5 million at the box office, which the currently projected 43 million to 52 million range for Shazam Fear of the Gods falls short of. Shazam went on to total 140.5 million domestically and over 366 million globally. While the new Shazam movie could be DCU canon, the subpar projection might put a damper on the movie, especially with the first film, since the first film did not do extremely well at the box office either. Although Avengers Endgame did cut Shazam's theater's legs short. Well, they say it didn't do well, but if you look at the box office for that first Shazam movie, it's very similar to the first Captain America. They did about the same domestically. In fact, I think Shazam actually did a little better overseas because overseas, outside of America, Captain America: First Avenger was a bomb. I mean, it flopped. As Gunn and Safran move away from the old DCEU, the creators are likely looking at what worked and what did not pan out in order to shape up the new DC universe to be the very best it can be. As Gunn himself said, Shazam's corner of DC was pretty much self contained, save for some references and line and visual gags to other DC heroes, such as the headless Cavill Superman cameo, which served as Easter eggs in the DC movie. Levi Shazam could be headed on the same path as Cavill's Superman. While Cavill Superman had quite a following, the character was present in a number of movies that bombed at the box office, which might have played a role in Gunn and Safran's decision to reboot The Man of Steel with Superman Legacy. That's the name of it, Superman Legacy. A report from last year also mentioned that Warner Brothers Discovery, DC's parent company, was low on resources to market their upcoming movies, with DC's focus currently being on the DC Reset. The Flash, Shazam, being on the DC Reset movie, The Flash, Shazam, Fury of the Gods has been set aside a little, and a move that has affected the film's box office projections and the likelihood of a DC movie being DCU canon. Yeah, so I mean, if they're not devoting resources to hype the movie, I think that kind of tells you about the future that Shazam has. And for what it's worth, I mean, I liked that first Shazam movie. I quite enjoyed it. I think it's one of the better DCU movies. And I'm really disappointed because at the end of that movie, they kind of teased a sequel that would have Dr. Savannah and Mr. Mind in it. And I'd love to see a sequel with those characters together. Mr. Mind's one of the better Shazam villains. Masters Maniac Mexico says, "What happened to creative movie making?" Well, it's just I think a lot of it is, I mean, there's obviously the whole aspect of this sort of woke filmmaking affecting how movies are written. I think that's part of it, but a part of it is also just, these studios are all owned by big corporations now. And I think as a result of that, there's just a lot of movie making by committee and a lot of just being adverse to risk taking and to new ideas. They just want to go with what they think is going to sell. Whatever the safest thing is. And part of that is also how, and you see it in the Marvel formula where it's just like all these different genres get lumped together. Where a Marvel movie and a lot of these big tentpole movies now, they're like a combination of an action movie, a sci-fi movie, kind of an action comedy, and it leads to this kind of blandness, for lack of a better term, kind of blandness in the stories and in the filmmaking. I think that's a big part of it too, is just the effect of all this corporate ownership has. Okay. All right. So I'm at an hour. So what I'll do is I'll just go what I customarily do, which is go check out the Super Team Family blog, and we'll go over a few covers, and then I'll wrap up here. So, for those who have listened to my live streams before, this is the Super Team Family blog. This is a website by a guy. The guy who created this, his name is Ross Pearsall, and he's been doing this blog since like 2010, where he creates fictional covers of comic book team ups that never happened. Feel free to go check his website out yourself. He does have a Patreon. So, hey, join his Patreon and contribute to him. The guy does good work. And also, I actually did interview Mr. Pearsall about maybe 2 months ago, month and a half ago for my channel. So look that live stream up as well. So we start out here. What the first one we've got is Batman and the Phantom. And of course, the Phantom is a classic kind of pulp character who actually predates most superheroes. And something I don't know if this is widely known, but of course, one of the things with Batman, and you see this with a lot of comic book characters, is that the eyes of the mask are white, right? You don't see eyeballs, you don't see the pupils of the eyes or anything like that. And that's kind of a common thing with comic book characters. You see that with Robin and with a lot of other superhero characters. So that style of depicting a character in a mask actually began with the Phantom. The Phantom's creator, Lee Falk, actually came up with that idea of blanking out the eyes in the mask. And as I understand it, he got that idea from Greek statues. Because, of course, most Greek statues, I think a lot of them were painted originally and maybe had eyes painted on. But, of course, over the thousands of years since they were made, the paint is all worn away. So now the face and even the eyes are just blank white. And he thought that would create an intimidating look. So that's why he made the Phantom's eyes white. And it was an idea that was picked up in the comics for other characters, Batman being one of them. So that's why Batman's eyes are whited out. And this is actually, I think, a multi-part. Yeah. So then there's a second part, Batman and the Phantom together again. And this would be fun to see because, again, he's kind of a pulp character, and I think he and Batman would work well together. Oh, and actually, it's a three-parter, so we've got another Phantom here. That's cool. And I'm not sure who the Batman artist is. I'm guessing that's Neil Adams on Batman, but I'm not entirely sure. That's a Jim Aparo Batman there. The first one, so that's Aparo as well. I think that's Dick Giordano inking, though. Okay, so then next we have Batman and the Phoenix. Well, that's an interesting pairing. And so we've got Batman, and this is a Neil Adams cover, I'm pretty sure. And then this is I'm pretty sure this is John Byrne's Phoenix, and this is Phoenix from, I believe, from the cover of X-Men 138 where Phoenix died. In the original cover, Cyclops is holding her in his arms. Batman and Nexus, and that would be an interesting pairing. And I believe this is Steve Rude who's doing the art here on both Batman and Nexus, both, I think. And this is a two-parter. So is this a three? No, it's a two-parter. So, and again, this is a cover. I believe this is, I think, Steve Rude doing the art on both Batman and Nexus. Nexus has such a cool costume. He really has one of the better comic designs, costume designs, especially for a character who's not at one of the big two, Marvel and DC. I just really love his costume. I'm generally of the mind that simpler costume designs are better, and I really like this one, just the way it's put together. Okay, so then Batman and Planet of the Apes. Okay, and so, of course, as we've seen before with these, Ross, he sometimes does team ups that you wouldn't think of, and this is definitely one of them. This would have to be some kind of alternate reality type of story. Ah, okay, Batman and the Punisher. Now, of course, um, well, first this cover. So this is the Punisher here. This is by Mike Zeck, I believe, and this is from a Punisher miniseries that was published back in like the mid '80s, early '80s, which Mike Zeck did the art for, and it was basically the first Punisher solo title. He had this miniseries, and then I think a couple of years later, uh, he got his solo series. Master Maniac Mexico says bad apes. I would read it. Yeah. Well, of course, there have been stories where Batman turns into a monkey. Those stories have been done, so we have had Bat Ape before. And Dega says Batman and Robocop. Yeah, that would be a cool team up. I think I've already seen one of those in these. I don't remember for sure, but I'm pretty sure that that is one of the ones he's done. Now, as for the Batman figure, I don't know where this comes from, but of course, in the comics, there have been Batman and Punisher team ups. Back in the 90s, there were two Batman Punisher crossover stories, one that was done by DC and one that was done by Marvel. And of the two, because the DC one, because it happened, the DC one was done during the time when Azrael was Batman and Bruce Wayne. He had replaced Bruce Wayne, so the Punisher Batman team up was with the Azrael Batman, not Bruce Wayne, which was kind of disappointing. But the Marvel one that was done with Bruce Wayne as Batman, and it had John Romita Jr. doing the art, and it was quite good. The villains in that were Joker and Jigsaw, I believe. Okay, so Batman and Rocketeer. So again, kind of like with the Phantom, kind of we've got some team ups of Batman with some kind of pulp type character. And now this cover is from a cover of Brave and the Bold. I believe I have this issue. And the original cover, God, what was the original team up? I'm thinking maybe it was Batman and Metamorpho. No, no, that's not it. It was something else. I can't remember, but this is a Jim Aparo cover of Brave and the Bold, and then they stuck the Rocketeer in here. Okay, Batman and Sandman. And Batman and Sandman is again a good pairing. Sandman is kind of a street level character, and this is definitely a Brave and the Bold cover. You can kind of tell up here, or actually, it may have been Detective, maybe. I'm not sure. It might have been a detective cover because I think this character Nemesis had a backup feature in Detective for a while, I think. But anyway, it's another Jim Aparo cover. I'm not sure who's doing the Sandman character there. Okay, so then Batman and the Vertigo, kind of Neil Gaiman version of Sandman. That's interesting. Not sure who's done this cover. I'm guessing that's a Rick Veitch Sandman, but I'm not sure who did the Batman figure though. Oh, okay. So this is like a three-part thing. So we've got a third Sandman. So this is Batman with the Bronze Age kind of 1970s Jack Kirby version of Sandman. This was a short-lived character, and it's too bad that he didn't get more attention and have more of a history. He's not a character DC has done a lot with. So Jack Kirby, when he came over to DC at the beginning of the 70s, he created several characters. Of course, he's probably best known for creating the New Gods and Darkseid and all that, but he did create other characters, including Commandy and Sandman, among others. And but aside from his initial series, which didn't run long, it only ran like maybe 6 issues or something. I know I do have a Justice League annual from like the early '80s that Sandman appears in. And but aside from that, I don't think he's appeared. I do think he popped up in the Neil Gaiman Sandman at some point because they kind of had to explain the history of his character in relation to the Vertigo version of Sandman. And I like this version. I wish they had done more with him. And obviously, that's a Kirby Sandman figure, and probably Jim Aparo again. All right, I think I'll go ahead and stop there because coming up on an hour and 15 minutes, I think that's enough. So I want to thank everyone for stopping by, and of course, all those who are going to be listening on a replay later. Thank you for tuning in, and I hope you enjoyed the stream, and I hope you all have a good night. Take care.